Hello, everyone, and welcome to BVM Sports Chalk Talk. I'm Lucas Semb alongside Scott Procter and Matt Morris. And once again, we are back to discuss the NBA Finals. We are now 3 games deep, and the Milwaukee Bucks have gotten their first win, bringing the series to 2-1. Scott, with Game 4 set for Wednesday night, what are your reactions to Game 3?
Yeah, Luke, I'm happy to be back once again. Listen, the story of Game 3 is nothing other than Giannis Antetokounmpo. What he continues to do on basketball's biggest stage, now averaging 34, 14, and 5 on 60% shooting during these finals, is the stuff of legends. Back-to-back 40-point, 10-rebound games in the finals is something only he and Shaquille O'Neal have ever done, and how fitting is that? You know, I said after Game 2 that the Bucks wasted an all-time performance from Giannis, but they played a much more complete game in Pfizer Forum, which is, you know, what all three of us here on this panel expected. Khris and Jrue combined for 39 points on 50% shooting, and the Bucks are simply just difficult to beat when that's the case, and Giannis is his usual self. But there's 2 glaring reasons why the Bucks were able to win Game 3, which I don't expect to become the norm, aside from DeAndre Ayton's foul trouble and the fact that Chris Paul is now 0-12 in games officiated by Scott Foster, who obviously officiated, Sunday night's Game 3. First and foremost, Devin Booker had his worst and lowest scoring game of this postseason, going just 3 of 14 from the field. He settled for too many contested 3-pointers early on in that game and just never got going simply. I don't anticipate anything remotely close to, that performance the rest of the way here. And secondly, part of the reason Giannis was so great in Game 3, as I alluded to earlier, was because not only did he attempt 17 free throws, which was more than the entire Suns roster combined, but he made 13 of them, which is spectacular for Giannis. We know his, free throw struggles in the past, and I honestly just don't expect that to be the norm moving forward. He's shooting 57% from the free throw line this postseason, and I especially don't expect that to continue, the good free throw shooting that is, when this series shifts back to Phoenix. So Milwaukee did what we expected them to do, and honestly what they had to do. And we're headed back to Game 4, back in the Pfizer Forum for what should be another good one. Matt, what did you
I
see?
actually have a couple follow-up questions for you, having listened to you there. With Devin Booker's 3 of 14 performance, do you credit the Milwaukee Bucks more, or do you blame that on Devin Booker? Because you seem to just say, it's a Devin Booker issue. What do you think about the Bucks defensively?
I thought the Bucks were better defensively. They still gave up 100 points. Again, even as I mentioned, not a single Phoenix Sun scored 20 points. They still scored 100 points. Devin Booker, as I mentioned, was forcefully putting up 3-pointers early in that game, first quarter, and I really don't have an explanation for it. Sure, it could have been better defense on behalf of Jrue Holiday, but again, I just don't expect Devin Booker, and I don't think you guys should either, based on what we've seen from him this postseason. He's not too far removed from a 40-point triple-double. So, again, the Bucks were better defensively, but I think it was more bad Devin Booker, than what the Bucks were able to do defensively in Game 3.
Sure. I mean, my second – I have one more follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Sorry. You had mentioned Giannis shooting more free throws than the entire Suns team, and I think it's, warranted, because he gets hacked in there every time. But there are some people who had gripes about it. I want to get your thoughts on what you think about the foul calls throughout this series thus far.
My thoughts on the foul calls? I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but I think I get what you're getting at.
Has the officiating been fair?
Do you believe that Giannis has earned the free throws that he's shooting? Because there's some people who don't think so.
Sure. I mean, listen, as I mentioned, Giannis is unstoppable when he wants to be, when he's in this zone. And 17 free throws isn't out of this world. Especially with the Phoenix Suns makeup of their roster, there really is no answer. When DeAndre Ayton is not on the court, there is no answer for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the only answer is to foul him in most spots. And I think a strategy moving forward is to foul him and hope that he regresses more to the mean of where he typically shoots free throws, in that 51 to 55% range from the free throw line. And again, him hitting 13 to 17 free throws, the 17 attempts is not the issue, really, because I think that's going to be more of the norm. But him hitting whatever that good percentage to 17 is not something I expect to continue to happen the rest of the way here. So the fouls are warranted. Again, the Scott Foster thing, and I actually want to put a question back onto you, Luke, and maybe even hear your thoughts on this, Matt. Actually, more so Matt, because I know how Luke feels about Chris Paul. But what do you make of the fact that Chris Paul is now 0-12 spanning his career in games that Scott Foster's officiated. This is not a 2 or 3 game sample size. This is spanning multiple seasons, and it is now coming to fruition in basketball's biggest stage.
I mean, you might have some games that you can look back on and say, oh, this was, there's some iffy calls. Overall, and I'll admit, we've talked about this, and I thought the calls were more towards Phoenix, especially in game 1. To this last night, you could make the argument that, the calls were going more towards Milwaukee's way, especially because, Giannis alone had more free throws, but it was only – I don't think there's much to say, and I get that a lot of people want to bring up Scott Foster, but I did not think this was a poorly officiated game. Yes, Giannis had more free throws, but if you look at the rest of the Bucks team, no one really had more than – like Khris Middleton had the second most with 3. So this was not where everyone on Milwaukee was getting a lot of calls. This was, we compare Giannis to Shaq, and Phoenix has adopted the hack-a-Shaq rule. If Giannis gets the ball within 5 feet of the rim,
he's
going to be tackled because you can't stop him any other way.
If they're going to foul him, they have to foul him because he's getting way too many and one. I'm sure Monty Williams.
I agree.
No, and that they grab him and they try to, because you rather make him earn 2 at the line, and you walk away probably most of the time with maybe 1 point rather than the 2 or the and 1. So absolutely, I understand that is something that's been talked about, but personally, looking back at game 3, I didn't see any egregious calls or anything that makes me point towards, oh, well, this is Scott Foster and Chris Paul. But I know other people have brought it up. I just don't think game 3 it fuels that fire, honestly.
I agree, Matt. I didn't see any egregious calls where it was like, oh, Chris Paul should be irritated about that or this call or whatever. I think it was a fairly officiated game. And like you mentioned, Giannis earned those fouls. No one else was really getting those outside of him. But let's move on. And one more thing, actually, real quick, I have to say, when Giannis is at the free throw line, he had a good game at the free throw line, but I'm begging Milwaukee Bucks fans, be quiet. All road games in Phoenix, he has to listen to people counting 1, 2, 3. Be quiet. It's a nice gesture to chant MVP and whatever and build your guy up.
I feel like they did it a couple of times. I feel like a couple of those free throw attempts, that crowd was pretty silent and they exploded when he obviously made it.
I didn't hear it once. I just begged that you let him do his thing, and he probably is just waiting for some silence at the line for once. It obviously worked out, and the fans in Milwaukee are building him up in a way. Phoenix is tearing him apart, so it might play a factor there. But I bet.
So Luke, I have to ask you a question then. So, do you believe the crowd noise impacts Giannis mentally when he's at the free throw line?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know how it couldn't. And like a reporter had asked him, do you pay mind to it? Do you hear it? And he said, of course I hear it. There's
so is it safe?
People yelling.
So is it safe to bet on my end that when the series inevitably shifts back to Phoenix, that we shouldn't expect Giannis to be as good as he was at the free throw line in game 3? Is that fair to say?
No, I think that's totally fair to say. I think in Milwaukee, I would expect the same from him in game 4. He's going to shoot a better percentage. He's got his people behind him, building him up. Like I mentioned a few times, when it gets to Phoenix, it's a different kind of energy that he has struggled with. So until he can prove that, I think it's safe to say that he'll shoot a worse percentage in Phoenix. But Matt, let's get your reactions to game 3.
I mean, game 3, I think that what you saw was, once again, each of these teams is really taking advantage of home crowds and sold out crowds and great energy. I mean, Phoenix has been fun to hear, even though, we're all watching it on TV. It's fun to hear that fan noise. And similarly, in Milwaukee, it's the same thing. I mean, even our producer, Mike, who was there, talked about how Phoenix had one opportunity to really try and get a run going. And it's when at the beginning of the third quarter, when the crowd was still, trying to recover from halftime. And that was their chance to make the run. And obviously Milwaukee handled it. The crowd fed them every step of the way. And everything that we talked about the Phoenix being able to do in games 1 and 2, especially game 1, the physicality, the just making your presence known and taking control of the court, Milwaukee was able to do. And also Giannis is apparently just going to continue to do this, enjoy the moment, enjoy watching an all-time great finals performance, whether he wins or loses. And it's just nice to see that his team step up and back him up in game 3, unlike what they did in game 2. And I just think that all around it was what you expect from Milwaukee at home. Whether it's the finals, the conference finals, the playoffs, or just the regular season, this is what you expect when you head into Milwaukee and you have to play the Bucks at Pfizer.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. We're kind of all on the same page here. What happened is nothing less than what I expected to happen. Going back home, down 0-2, I said the city would be ready. The Bucks have been in this situation before. They thrive here. 40,000 people within and outside the Fiserv Forum. One of the most special things in the world right now. No other city has something like this, especially Phoenix. It's too hot. These people can't be hanging out outside. I don't know why Stephen A loves it so much, but the Bucks, the Bucks respond to all of these things. My biggest reaction here is that the Bucks continue to just be so resilient. All postseason long, they suffered some unfortunate losses, some close losses. The media instantly is all over them, very critical of them, and they just never falter when the tough gets going. That's the biggest story here, I think. That's when they're at their best. Another reaction of mine here is that Giannis Antetokounmpo is a top 10 player of all time, regardless of how this finals shakes up. He is just such an unbelievable talent. Reason number one, we have never seen someone with his size and talent combination before. Being able to be 7 feet, bring the ball up the court. He is transcendent. He has altered the way that basketball is played in this league because everyone wants those big guys who can handle the ball now. The reason number two, like I said last week, he has achieved everything you can possibly achieve at 26 years old, besides the NBA Finals. And the only remaining question was, can he get there? Can he be the best player on an NBA Finals team? And he is absolutely dominating. That question has been answered. LeBron no longer dominates the league like that. KD doesn't dominate like this on both ends of the floor. Giannis is the only guy doing this. And he has been to one finals. He has more 40-point games than KD, Steph, Kobe, Duncan, Larry Bird, Karl Malone, Kareem, Wilt. He joined Shaq, like you said, Scott, as the only players in league history to go back-to-back 40-point, 10-rebound games in the finals. It's pure dominance. He is top 10 all time, regardless of what people say, at this young age to be doing this and continue to do it and get better year after year when you think, come on, he has to be near his ceiling. And he just keeps getting better. It makes no sense to me.
Are you done?
That's just how I feel about it.
I have a question real quick before we go into this. Are you saying that I just want to be clear on your stance here. You're saying regardless of the outcome of this series, so basically if Giannis and the Bucks were to lose these finals, Giannis is still a top 10 player all time. That's what you're saying?
Yes, that's the way I feel. I've seen enough. I've seen his name making headlines enough and putting himself in just elite company and all sorts of statistics. We've literally only seen dominance like this a couple times before, maybe LeBron, Shaq. He's putting together a historical postseason, something that we really need to be able to take in and appreciate.
So this is why it's frustrating for people like myself who aren't natural Bucks fans, who aren't natural Giannis fans. Although I do like Giannis, I was just super complimentary of him recently and at the top of this show. But that's absolutely ridiculous, especially if we're going on the idea that he doesn't have a ring yet. And the fact that you're willing to say that he's top 10 over some guys that I will mention here in a second without a ring is absolutely blasphemous. I'm going to throw two Lakers at you out the gate before we go down this list. Is Giannis without a ring better all time than Shaquille O'Neal and or Kobe Bryant? Yes or no?
To me, I think so. Yes, I do think so. Kobe, on a lot of the titles that he had, was the Robin to Shaq's Batman.
But not all of them.
No, not all of them. You're right. And remember, the main.
And how many rings does he have again?
My main
5
point
of them things, right?
My main point of this is that Giannis is 26. This is not the end for him. He is just starting to peak, and he has done all of this already. If he gets a finals, he's 100% top 10 all time. If he gets his finals, 100%. If he doesn't, it's just.
I'm willing to have that conversation, but the idea that he's top 10, whether they win these finals or not, that I'm completely rejecting that. Because again, for you to say at 26 years old that he's on track to be one of the top 10 all time, fine, I'm cool with that.
It's not on track. I'm not saying he's on track.
I know you're not. I know that's not what you're saying. That's what you should be saying.
In my personal opinion, I think he is there, and you can have your opinion. You're entitled to that. But this is something that truly, and besides my fandom, aside from that, something that we've only seen a handful of times in NBA history for someone to be playing like this. And it was the only question that was unanswered about him. So
but when you're talking about all time, you're talking about all-time greats to play this game who have amassed a career of individual and team achievements. And Giannis has yet to do that, as well as he has played in all the things that he's accomplished. He hasn't done everything. He hasn't done all of that. He hasn't.
All of it besides the finals. We've had great players like Kobe,
which is arguably the most important piece.
We've had great players like Kobe offensively or Kevin Durant offensively. Or they don't do it the way that Giannis does on both sides. Like a lot of these guys are missing the defensive factor. But
a lot of those guys who are really truly top 10 do things that Giannis can't do. For example, shoot free throws at a passable clip and shoot threes. Like,
Shaq couldn't shoot free throws at a passable clip either, and he's top 10, right?
Who'd you say? You said Shaq?
Yeah. Yep.
Right, and that's why he's mentioned. That's why those two are mentioned with each other, and that's why the reason Shaq is ahead of Giannis all time by a significant amount is because he was able to bypass his free throw shooting and win multiple rings. Some as the best player on his team.
Nothing here is a significant amount because you just said you were willing to have the conversation that if he gets a title this year,
right,
you'd talk about him being top 10 all time. He's 3 games away. If he loses the finals by a game or 2 games. He's not that far off from being in your top 10 all time. So I don't want to hear the word significant difference between anyone.
As it stands right now, it's a significant gap. As it stands right now, it's a significant gap. Matt, I would love to hear your input on this. And I hope you could, inject some realness into this conversation from your boy over here.
He lost me at Kobe and Shaq.
I
mean, let's just, I can off the top of my head, I love Giannis. I love what he's doing. I am not taking it for granted as someone who's watched him from the very beginning.
And Matt, let me jump in real quick and I'll give it right back to you. And I hate to have this conversation with Luke because this should be about celebrating Giannis and what he's currently doing. But instead, we have to talk about why he's obviously not a top 10 player all time. But go ahead.
LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan, Irvin Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Jerry West.
Did you mention Tim Duncan?
Wilt Chamberlain.
Did you mention Tim Duncan?
Tim Duncan. Like, I just got
Jerry West in your top 10.
All time? That's off of the top of my head that I could think of right now.
Jerry West is the logo, but you better go look at his resume.
Matt's not wrong, though. There's easily 10 guys that you can name.
You really are about to just disrespect the logo? Giannis is not at the logo yet. It's Jerry freaking West. Like, What do you want? I'm just telling you, I love what Giannis is doing. This is awesome. And basically what this is telling me is this is about 5 years of Wisconsin screaming at the top of their lungs, Giannis and the Bucks are legit. And now that they've gotten to the mountaintop, I'm going to be honest, like, it's great. It's awesome. They're at the mountaintop. They haven't totally, gotten to the peak. They haven't planted the flag and gotten the finals yet. But this is the chance to scream to everyone like, hey, you should have been paying attention. All of the BS about Milwaukee's a small market. He's never going to want to leave. He has issues with free throws and three-point shooting. All of that absolutely does not matter. And Giannis is, if not the best in the league right now, top 3, no doubt. I mean, you can't argue anything less than that. Probably 2. If you want to argue KD, I'll listen to that.
And I think he has been for years. That's where the top 10 of all time thing.
It's an argument that the Bucks fans have been putting up, but nobody else has wanted to listen to it. 2 years ago, had you gone up to Scott and said, "Oh, Giannis is like the best,"
but Matt, you and I both know that holds no. You got to take that with a grain of salt. The media has never given Milwaukee credit for anything, including Giannis.
But I understand that. That's why you can't take an overreaction all of a sudden. Like, you can't all of a sudden Giannis puts together 2 40-point games and makes history in that sense. But let's be honest, we've seen a lot of careers fall apart. I would have argued that Derrick Rose was on the path to be an all-time great when he had an MVP, the youngest MVP ever, and was causing problems for LeBron with the Miami Heat.
Matt, that's a despicable take from you to say that I am overreacting when you and I know damn well Giannis has been doing this for years. He's a back-to-back MVP. He's playing the best basketball of his career right now, and he wasn't even the MVP.
This is not an overreaction. LeBron James not being the best.
This is not an overreaction. It's just finally the media seeing, let me finish. This is finally the media seeing him on the top stage and seeing him do what he does. This is nothing new to me and you. There's no overreaction here whatsoever. And that was despicable. Despicable.
It's not despicable, first of all. Calm down for a second.
No, absolutely despicable. And in fact, we're running out of time. We got to move this thing along. And I'll let you lead, Matt. I have a question here. Consider this. Giannis, obviously the number one player for the Bucks and for them to continue winning and to win this series. But who is the most important X factor for the Bucks right now? Is it Khris Middleton or is it Jrue Holiday?
Man, you win so many arguments by moving on the conversation.
We only get a 30-minute time slot and we're at 20, so let's move it along here.
30-minute time slot. I'll talk 10 minutes about this. It's going to be great TV. The X factor for the Bucks is definitely Jrue Holiday. Simply even before what he was able to do in Game 3, the entire reason he was brought in is because within the Bucks organization, they knew what they were going to get from Giannis. They believed in what they were going to get from Khris. And Khris, I believe, has shown in the playoffs that you can rely on him to step up and be that number 2 guy when they need him to be. They brought Jrue Holiday in to be that third X factor that Eric Bledsoe simply was not able to be. I love Eric Bledsoe. I thought he was great for the Bucks in that time period, but Jrue Holiday showed why he is so important to the Bucks and why he's needed. First of all, just the defense alone was impressive, going and trying to guard Chris Paul full court. And I love his response after the game was, well, I mean, either me or Chris is going to get tired. One of us has to be. So he's going to go all out and try and stop one of the point guard. And he's done a very good job so far, better than a lot of people have done in the past. And then finally, you saw that offense that you'd seen from him all season. You finally saw that come back. He hit 3 big threes in a row. One was a great step back that I've seen him do throughout this season, and even a little bit in the playoffs as well. I mean, 5 for 10 from the 3. He was aggressive to getting to the hoop. And also his passing ability has always been great. I mean, he had 9 assists. And that's one thing that obviously when you look at the Bucks and you look at what Holiday has done, when he doesn't score, he's still distributing the ball very well. He averages, I believe, around 7 or 8 assists, something fairly high. And actually in Game 3, he had the highest plus minus with a plus of 22. Giannis was second with 20. So he finally stepped up. And I think that if you see something, even if it's not 21 points, as long as he's getting 15 and being aggressive and making some of those shots you saw him make, which he can do, that's why he is the X factor moving forward.
And Matt, I disagree with you here. Listen, the fate of the Milwaukee Bucks often is decided by Khris Middleton. His aggressiveness, his assertiveness or lack thereof, and his just overall play consistently determines the outcomes of Bucks games. Because Giannis is so dominant, as we've alluded to on this show already, and unstoppable at times, all it honestly takes at this point is legitimate help from one other guy that beat just about everybody. As I said earlier, when Khris is Khris with a K instead of Khris with a C, while Giannis is his usual self, the Bucks are awfully tough to beat. Conversely, when you're 6 of 23, 7 of 20, 6 of 23 again, 6 of 17. These are real shooting nights from Khris Middleton this postseason. Giannis and the Bucks are bound to look helpless. And I found a stat last night looking through some numbers that I believe paints this picture perfectly and honestly puts this debate to rest. These playoffs, this postseason, the Milwaukee Bucks are 12-1 when Khris Middleton shoots at least 40% from the field. They are 1-6 when he shoots below 40% from the field this postseason. Not to mention that Khris Middleton has assumed the closer role and is counted on in late game situations when the Bucks need a bucket in the half court. No one outside of Giannis is more important to this Bucks team than Khris, either with a C or with a K.
Scott, and I think I'm going to use that to my argument here. I think that's where you're wrong. That's just who Khris Middleton is. Yeah, and that's why he's not the X factor.
Who is who he is?
Khris Middleton is who he is. He's a guy who's hot and cold. That's just what you get from Khris Middleton.
I got you. Okay.
You don't need to think about it too deeply. Giannis is Giannis. He's your MVP, generational talent. But no superstar has ever won alone. He needs those sidekicks. Khris Middleton is Khris Middleton. They've been there together for 8 years. Some thought they could get to the finals with Khris as their number 2. Some disagreed. But bottom line, it didn't happen. But for 8 years, the Bucks know Khris Middleton can be Khris with a K, and they know Khris Middleton can be Khris with a C, as you like to say. And that's exactly why they went and got Jrue Holiday. He was brought in to literally be the X factor that put them over the top. He was thought of as that missing piece. And, Holiday is supposed to be that two-way star. And when he plays like Eric Bledsoe, they've lost. When he plays like himself, they've won. It's been a very glaringly obvious correlation between his play and the win-loss time.
Scott, going off of Luke, because I agree, the reason you can't say Khris Middleton is similar to if you were giving the argument, if we flipped it to the Suns, you know what you're going to get from Chris Paul and Devin Booker day in and day out. If DeAndre Ayton doesn't, but DeAndre Ayton has been a huge part of this series and has been a surprise throughout the playoffs, and he's been that X factor for the Suns. Similarly with Jrue Holiday, because he's been a little bit more inconsistent, because I think he tends to be less aggressive when Giannis is in, and that's something the Bucks keep trying to address. He is the X factor in that sense. And Middleton, everyone talks about hot and cold, and I understand that. But to your own point, they're 12-1 when he shoots over 40%. You said they're 12-1 when he shoots over 40%.
Right.
Even if he's Khris that's a pretty good ratio. And as much as everyone wants to say he's inconsistent, it's not on a super regular basis. He may have a bad game and then he responds. And you can't give me that look because the Bucks are in the NBA Finals, and in 2 of those games, Giannis was not a part of it. So to argue that Khris is
and who stepped up in those 2 games, and who stepped up mostly in those 2 games where Giannis was absent? I would argue, and I think you guys would agree, it was Khris Middleton. And here's my thing: you guys are turning on me about this hot and cold thing with Khris. We all know Khris is hot and cold. He's as inconsistent as they come. But is that not what we've seen out of Jrue Holiday over the last month or so? He's been just as inconsistent, if not more.
No, he's been more. If anything, he's been more.
In terms of a shooting percentage, Jrue Holiday has been hot or cold. But you know what you're always going to get out of him on the defensive end of the ball, passing the ball, facilitating, rebounding.
Exactly. And that's why I believe Khris Middleton is the true X factor, because Jrue Holiday's greatest asset to the Milwaukee Bucks is what he brings on the defensive end. And that's always going to be there. But Khris Middleton, what he brings on the offensive end is what swings the lever to a win or a loss of the Milwaukee Bucks. I gave you the numbers. When he shoots well, when he's efficient, they almost always win, period. Okay. And when he doesn't, they almost always lose, period.
Do you know what he's averaging in the playoffs? 43%.
I don't know the number off the top of my head.
He's averaging 43% from the field, 34% from 3, 89% from the free throw line. He's averaging 22.8 points.
Did you say 43% from the field? Or
43% from the field, 34%. Okay. So that whole argument, he's been averaging that. He's been consistent. Against Phoenix alone, he's averaging 22 points, 8 assists, 33 from the field, and 43.6 from the field, and 33% from 3. So this argument that he's having, I can understand he has a bad game every once in a while. But once again, the Milwaukee Bucks, as with him as their number 2, are in the NBA, and with 2 games without Giannis, are in the NBA Finals. So just sheerly based on the question,
they were knocking on the doorstep.
He can't be the X factor because he's been reliable. He can't be the X factor.
And Matt, I have to say, they were knocking on the door of the Finals with Khris as their number 2 this whole time.
Absolutely, Eastern Conference Finals 2 years ago.
Exactly, and you bring Jrue Holiday in, they're in the NBA Finals. I think that's where you rest the case. And another way I look at it here is that, teams are going to game plan and put their best defenders on Giannis and Khris. And that's just always going to be the case. So you need Jrue Holiday to be that third guy with a more ideal matchup to score those points and go out for you and really be the X factor. So that's how I see it, but I can see the case for Middleton.
This is my biggest thing, and we can move on here at this point. My biggest thing is that when Khris Middleton is Khris with a K, when he's efficient, when he's 25 plus on 40+% shooting, good luck beating the Milwaukee Bucks. My thing is when Jrue Holiday doesn't have to be great offensively for the Milwaukee Bucks to win, so long as Giannis and Khris are them true selves. And that's my biggest thing. That's why Khris is the biggest X factor of it.
Okay, Scott, I understand what you're saying, and I get that. Simply what I'm putting in is when Khris with a K shows up a heck of a lot more than with a C. And it shows because the Bucks have been great, and his playoff stats, his postseason stats are great. And when him and Giannis are playing well, let me finish. When him and Giannis are playing well, to your point, it's very hard to beat the Bucks. Yeah. My simple argument is that when you throw in Jrue Holiday, you can't beat the Bucks. And that's why he's the X factor. You just explained it. When Jrue Holiday can have a so-so game, but as long as Khris and Giannis are stepping up and doing what we expect them to do, it's still going to be a very good chance the Bucks win. When Jrue Holiday steps up and is dropping, 21 on 50% from three, then it's game over. There is no argument. The Bucks are going to 9 out of 10 times win that game, and the only way they lose is if Chris Paul and Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton are dropping, 40-point triple doubles and doing all of that. That's why Jrue Holiday is the X factor. Your entire argument, I get it, but Khris is way more consistent. He's been more consistent. And when Jrue Holiday does decide to step up because he's been a little bit more inconsistent, then it's game over for the Bucks.
Right.
What was Jrue Holiday's best game this postseason? It was a 33-point explosion in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Atlanta Hawks with a fully healthy Giannis. And what happened? The Milwaukee Bucks lost that game. I rest my case. Luke, what's up?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying the Bucks need both of these guys to play well to win the NBA Finals. But as we wrap up here, let's make our quick predictions for Game 4 on Wednesday night. Scott, what do you think is going to happen?
Hey, listen, man. Hey, the Phoenix Suns are undefeated in Game 4s this postseason. They won them all on the road, and they have a real chance to lock this series up because it's over if the Phoenix Suns go up 3-1, headed back to Phoenix. But I'm going with the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm in this series for the long haul. I think this goes 6 or 7 games. I think the Milwaukee Bucks, as I've mentioned, defend Pfizer Forum, defend the home court, and we're going to head back to Phoenix up 2-2, which is what everybody wants.
I think everyone has bought into this idea that Phoenix just has bad game 3s and they can write it off as that. And yeah, they had a bad game 3 once again. The difference is that this is the NBA Finals and this is the Milwaukee Bucks and this is Pfizer Forum. And I don't think that it's going to be that easy as, they just had a bad game 3 and they can, step back. I think they make improvements. Devin Booker is obviously going to come back and play way better than he did. But I still think the Bucks defend home court and have some momentum heading back to Phoenix for Game 5.
Absolutely, and the Bucks have to feel good about getting that first win. But I say Game 4 is still a must-win game for them. You do not want to go back.
Absolutely.
Not want to go back to Phoenix down 3-1. And Giannis said it best in his presser. He didn't want to talk about Game 3. He wanted to stay focused on getting another one and going back to Phoenix, knotted up. And I think they do that. I think they defend home court. So give me the Bucks in Game 4 Wednesday night. But that's all the time we have here today on Chalk Talk. For myself, Scott Procter, and Matt Morris, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the NBA Finals, and we'll be here next week.